the Survivor, we bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to a Saturday special edition of Surviving the Survivor. It is the show that brings you the very best guests in all of true crime. One day we're in New York City. The next day we are in Miami. When news breaks, we follow it. And yesterday you heard about this. It's the NOLA jailbreak. We're going to dig into all the details. It is breaking news out of the Crescent City, New Orleans. 10 inmates, not one, not two, not three, 10 inmates pulling off a wild jailbreak, which was all caught on camera, by the way, and the COE is going to get us that video. They sneaked out through a hole behind a toilet. As of the airing of this show right now, 1 p.m. Eastern time, Saturday, 3 of the 10 have been recaptured, including a guy named Kendall Miles. He is a known escape artist, meaning he has previously done so. And he also is in there because he was charged with attempted murder. And he's not the only one. 7 are still on the run. At least 3 others are charged with second-degree murder, including a guy named Derek Groves, who is of particular interest to law enforcement because he's already convicted in a double homicide. And there's fear here that he was trying to get out to potentially harm a witness for a future trial. And that witness, I think, has been brought into special protection. Authorities are saying that this escape may have involved inside help. The case far from over. Let's just bust this wide open on a Saturday. And let me start here with fan favorite Rob D'Amico. Rob, you know, we cover a lot of crazy stories here. We had most notably, I think one of them among them, Danilo Cavalcante, who you'll remember he I don't know what the term is, monkey walked, whatever. He got himself out of a fairly high security detention center in Pennsylvania, and then he was on the loose for a whole bunch of days. Are you surprised when you heard this number 10? And for the guest, Jim, which I think you're already doing, let's keep ourselves muted. There's a little weird audio hiss going on. But Rob, when you heard the number 10 inmates escaping, what immediately went through your mind? Because your mind, in a good way, is different than all ours because of what you've done in the past.
Yeah, I definitely was surprised. And then to hear that they didn't know for, like up to 8 hours after was also surprising. Then I saw it was in New Orleans and said, well, yeah, I can, if it's going to happen, I can kind of picture it down there, only because I just see the prison system down there being a bit antiquated. And again, the weather down there is all hard on that. And they talked about the locks not working and stuff being run down. And then I started reading more into it. And again, it was just shocking bit by bit, more that I got into it. Definitely, a lot of mistakes made. The sheriff was, said this doesn't happen without a lot of bad things happening. They've already suspended 3 people. They know there's some inside help. I did find, though, and I think it'll hurt, they were so arrogant. They wrote stuff on the walls like this was easy and taunting the police when they escaped. And so, again, there's so many things in this one that we'll dig into. But yeah, at first when I heard 11 and then it came down to actual 10, I was like, wow, that's a big prison break. And then to read how they did it, it just kept getting shocking and more shocking.
Yeah, for those who are new to the show, Rob D'Amico has his own show on our second channel that just debuted, which is at STS Talk. It's a all true crime talk channel at STS Talk. So check out Rob's show. He's former military and retired FBI hostage rescue team. Chris Davila joins us as well. He's a former captain, and we do have the best guests in true crime. Thanks to Steve Cohen, who runs that from behind the scenes. But Chris Davila is a retired captain from the New York City Department of Corrections, and he has actually investigated escapes, among other things, while assigned inside the NYC DOC investigation unit. So, Chris, you're the man with the inside baseball knowledge here. Got 7 of these 10 on the run, and you heard that a bunch of them have attempted murder, and one is a convicted murderer. What are they doing right now? And we just lost Chris. So, Jim, I'm going to ask you that question because you were. Oh, there, Chris, you're back. So, I was going to ask you, Chris, what's going on inside baseball right now with trying to retrieve these inmates on the run? And you guys, I apologize, you have to mute and unmute yourselves. Go ahead, Chris.
So, I mean, every prison, every jail has procedures for this kinds of thing. And one of the first things they're going to do is deploy a team to find these guys, obviously. But they're also going to start examining what caused these failures. Because true, it very well could have been an inside job. And I don't know that it is or it isn't. Other people may have more inside information, quote unquote. But a lot of these things also result from just people cutting corners, staff cutting corners, not checking what they should check, not looking into cells, not examining the doors, not, and it's true, there are maintenance issues as well. When I worked on Rikers Island and some of the borough commands there were a lot of substandard equipment. And that can cause a lot of major issues. In the Department of Correction in New York City, they would sometimes deploy internal teams, depending on the nature of the crime. They would farm that out maybe to the NYPD or even the U.S. Marshals. But there are a lot of procedures. People are looking into what happened. I'm always hesitant to just immediately say it was an inside job, but that's not to say it isn't. I mean, there are inside jobs. We've heard of a lot of famous inside jobs, but a lot of it is also people just officers and supervisors sometimes cutting corners, being a little bit more lax, feeling a little bit too comfortable in the environment, saying to themselves even something as simple as, this would never happen. When I heard the bathroom hole, I thought of Alcatraz, and I thought of the movie, with Clint Eastwood. And I just recently read the story about how they escaped and how the deterioration of the concrete and the walls from the elements, the salt water and so on, was made it a lot easier. So I think there's so many different reasons why this might have happened without knowing exactly what happened. I'm not surprised at all that there's a lot of political hay being made that this was an inside job. The sheriff is responsible, and here's this, whether he was or he wasn't, or whether it was an inside job or it wasn't. I'm in this environment. I can't imagine why someone wouldn't use that as political ammunition. So,
and, we're going to get to retired Kings County in Seattle hostage negotiator Jim Fuda, who's he's got war stories like Rob D'Amico. But Chris, just real quick, there's a comment that caught my attention, which is about these jails, prisons, you name it, just being understaffed and underfunded. Do you think that's a problem, that they're just not able to hire the sort of quality or in the numbers of people that they need to keep these prisons, locked down and safe?
Absolutely. It is a huge problem. Very few people are hesitant to go into law enforcement, period, because of public opinion and the way they're bashed every single day. There are a few bad apples, of course, but it's not the majority in my experience. I think that the staffing is a real problem because when there's less people, more people have to do overtime. It becomes unsafe for the person on the floor, the officer or the supervisor. If you're working 17-hour shifts or tours, as we call them, you're bound. And then there's very little break in between. You're doing that sometimes 4 or 5 days in a row with an 8 or 10 hours in between. And that includes getting home, sleeping, showering, and getting back. It's just unsafe for the inmates and for the officers. They're too tired. The inmates are now not being sufficiently protected, or at least sufficiently watched, because people are physically exhausted. I think that is a big problem. And as just to mention something about, you said the quality of people, You know, they're even lowering standards just to get people in. And I don't mean let me rephrase that. Not standards. They're making it the tests free. They are saying you don't need as much college as you did before. Things like that, just to get physical, living, breathing bodies to walk the tiers and to walk the housing unit. So it's definitely a problem.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's the reason, but that is, I'm sure, a contributing factor.
Yeah, we're gonna stay on this story. I'm always intrigued by these stories, how the guys like Rob, Jim, and Chris track these guys down. But you're looking at a basically a wanted poster. You see the three captured. The guy in the top left is a convicted or wanted for murder. I'm not sure if he's the actual one who's convicted. They're worried about one of them going after potentially a witness. I think it is this guy Kendall Miles. I'll have to double check it. And here, without further ado, is everyone's got a camera, including jails, and this is the video. So let me bring this up real quick. COE, help me out here. Can you bring that up, COE? It won't let me do it for some reason. So let me take this down. Hang on, everybody. Okay, so this is video now of the inmates. Look at this. Jim Fuda, this looks like an SNL sketch, not to make light of it. One guy has his little blankie there, and we'll play it again. Let's just watch this one more time. They literally are running out of the jail. This guy's carrying a blanket. They're in their orange prison attire. It looks like they probably changed out of it. I mean, that might be some of the craziest video that I've seen. But Jim, don't forget to unmute yourself. What is running through your mind from your perspective as a hostage negotiator? Before you answer that, they did leave notes on the wall in the cell saying it's too easy, LOL. They misspelled two, but too easy, LOL. Catch us when you can. Most hated 9, and we innocent. So Jim, you're a guy that's got to, if these guys get caught up in a situation where they barricade themselves and SWAT's got to come in, you got to negotiate. Who are we dealing with here, and how do you deal with them?
Well, it looks like you're dealing with some antisocial personalities there that if they're taunting as they go, but like what Rob and Chris said is this an inside job, or was it just lackadaisical, lack of training? Obviously they escaped during the night, and so somebody didn't do a head count. If the sheriff wasn't found out, learn about this till 8:30 in the morning. But yeah, you get these guys caught. From what I understand, is that the clothes that they were wearing, these orange suits, were found. So somebody on the outside was there helping them with setting clothing, heading to a spot where they could change their clothes to blend in more with the community once they did escape.
Yeah, this video will definitely go down in the annals of news videos for sure. Rob D'Amico, back to you, and just a reminder to keep muting and unmuting, please. The inmates here exploited a maintenance corridor after removing a toilet and then breaching or breaking a wall. They then exited through a loading dock door and scaled the perimeter wall using blankets, which is why they had their blankies, to avoid that barbed wire cutting them. And they cross over Interstate 10. And again, Sheriff Susan Hudson, she indicated that the escapees, as you guys had already mentioned, likely received help from the inside. The plumbing panel that's used in the escape can only be removed from the outside. It cannot be removed from the inside, which is why they believe there was internal help. But Rob D'Amico, as I said to Chris, give us the inside baseball here. So the feds have been called in to help. If you're living in New Orleans and they say, hey, Rob, get in here, these 10 guys are missing and there's some killers on the loose, where do you start? What do you do?
Yeah. So one thing I want to go back to, like we talked about manpower, but in today's technology, like I get it, they have less guards on there, but if you had AI hooked up to it and it's in the middle of the night and there should be no movement, you can easily have an AI algorithm actually that can detect orange and movement at that time that then would alert other people. So, it's a lot of bad things. The locks aren't working, but also simple things. If you're down personnel, you can have technology really come in nowadays to help you with these and movement at, in midnight. That shouldn't be happening. You can literally have it distinguished between orange and other things. But so when these do happen, and I've been called in on a couple when I was working fugitives, my first office in Miami. A lot of the fugitives that we looked at, were typical people that had, not been arrested or escaped, and then they're long-term fugitives. Ones like this are a lot different, but you're going to still go through the same things. Like this one being in New Orleans, they only have about 180 degrees of direction to go. In Pennsylvania, you can go north, south, east, west. This one, it's basically north and then north, and then east and west at a point. So it does cut down some of it, but you're going to they have to go to where they come from, where they have some support and they need things. They have to be able to trust some of the folks that are going to see them. Now, someone had mentioned, was it $2,000 each? I think that's a pretty low reward, but when you're dealing with 10 of them, I guess, only so much money to dole out on capturing these guys. But they're going to go through the typical fugitive investigations. They're going to start with, where they're familiar with, trying to also nowadays CCTV. Start looking at, camera footage. Even if it's you're looking at, say, a guy's relative's house and you see across the street, there's a store that has CCTV, that the relatives may not give you information, but that TV camera might. So as you're going around, we call them, neighborhood canvases, where you go around and talk to people and you ask things. Same thing with businesses. You're looking at, hey, does this have a camera that's pointed at that? Can I see your footage? Can I look at things? And it just starts from there. And they now have a lot more manpower that the federal, agencies have gotten involved. The feds work a bit different with numbers and manpower and overtime and stuff. And then, they also now are starting to look at, cell phone stuff. Where's there a cell phone located outside of this prison that maybe corresponded with a pickup car, getaway something, and then you can start tracking that differently and stuff like that. But there's so many people now getting involved in this. But like you said, last time it took how many weeks to find one guy?
Yeah.
And now you have 10, so you kind of have to multiply that. But I think you're actually going to start finding them. I think within a couple of weeks, or all will be rounded up.
Yeah. By the way, they did use, to Rob's point about technology, facial recognition, which we can circle back on because I'm not even sure. Rob, real quick, how does that work? I mean, they used facial recognition. So where did they get, at what point were their faces or a face recognized, and how?
Well, when they were booked, they took all all the different profile pictures. And then once you have a picture, then it goes into a mapping of facial recognition. That's how it does, is it just plots points on there. And then you can compare things to those. So, and that's, again, they have plenty of pictures during the booking photos that then they can use to compare to it. Some of it, though, it has to be at certain resolution. So say you have a CCTV that, is not a high resolution one. It may be hard to tell, but nowadays, some of these cameras, like the ones I have outside my house, a couple of them are 1080p 4K cameras, and they can actually do it very well.
Yeah. By the way, they didn't discover these guys for that they were missing for 7 or 8 hours later, which is another part of this conversation. But Jim Fuda, to you, and by the way, I always scour on news stories like this. I'm looking at real-time news, and I know the COE is, and if we get a press conference, et cetera, we'll bring it to you, and we'll stay on the story over the next bunch of days, to follow it and see where we're at. But Jim Fuda, these inmates, this is a movie expression, but it's also a real life expression. Consider them armed and dangerous. And this is a city. This is one of America's biggest cities. It's a high crime city. And these guys are scattered everywhere. If you come across one or they come across you, what do you do, Jim Fuda?
Well, the best thing you can do is be a good witness. Like you just said, it takes a community. They're in a community to help get these guys into custody. And I always say this all the time with the Crime Stopper stuff that I do now, is that somebody knows who these people are, knows where they are. And if you're afraid to contact the police, you could call Crime Stoppers. New Orleans has a great Crime Stoppers program. In fact, the USA conference is there this year. So with that said, is that these tips can come into Crime Stoppers and go directly to the feds or to whoever's going after the marshals, who's ever going after these people, and so they get some credible information that way that we can get these guys into custody safely.
Yeah. By the way, Nicole Luongo, friend of the show, friend of mine, even though we never met, but I feel like that about most people. By the way, just got this in the mail when I got home from Diddy coverage, and it's available to you at a merch store. It's actually super soft, and I love it. A little retro STS Nation shirt. But Chris, to you, just back to, again, I'm always fascinated by behind the scenes stuff. All of you guys, encounter danger as part of your job, which I don't know that I could do myself. But in terms of the coordination of this from both inside the jail, so we've got the jail investigation, which probably went wrong. But can you give us a little bit, because now you're at the epicenter in the jail, right? But then you've got the Rob D'Amico's coming in, you've got state police coming in. How is this all coordinated at this point, Chris?
Well, it's funny. I was just thinking about mentioning this. If I could just go back to the count, you're right. First of all, at nighttime or evening tours or overnight tours, there are typically fewer staff members because there are fewer things going on. It's only watching the housing units or the tiers or the blocks or whatever term. So I'm not surprised that would be the time when they decided to stage a break of that scale. It's kind of shocking to me because we're supposed to count inmates. If you're working in a jail or a prison, you count them often for this very reason, so that 8 hours does not pass. If and when
Chris,
somebody
Chris,
leaves.
I'm sorry. Let me just stop you there because this is important information. So the escape occurs around 1 a.m., but the public is not notified until 9.5 hours later at 10:30 in the morning. So you've got these guys on the loose for 9.5 hours. They could be going into homes, taking people
at the most vulnerable time, when people are sleeping.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing, I want you to continue with what you were just saying. The other thing, though, Chris, 10 guys escape at once. Apparently, there wasn't even a corrections officer on duty. It was some kind of civilian type guy who went to get food, and when he left, these guys all shuttle out. But aren't the other 9 or 8 guys, assuming maybe one pair of bunkmates, shouldn't they be locked in their own cell? How did all these guys get out of one cell?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know what the circumstances were of their housing. Were they in a dorm environment? Were they in individual cells? I don't know. But I can say this: the coordination is not as difficult as one would think. When people make phone calls, at least in my experience, a lot of the phone calls are made to conference call companies. So there are people who get on a call, they call someplace, and it's a conference call. So now they're added to a call with multiple people, sometimes dozens of people on that line. So coordinating, even if they were in different housing units or cell blocks or in different areas, I don't think the coordination would be that difficult. And plus, during the day, inmates congregate. With the exception of those who are in protective custody or different segregation units, inmates congregate for programs, for recreation, for religious services, you name it. So coordinating is not that big a deal. I think one thing to always remember about people who are incarcerated is they have nothing but time. You go in to work and you want to do your job and you leave, you go home and you go to sleep. But these individuals are watching the officers. They're watching the supervisors. They're watching every move they're making. They're watching to see if they are weak or strong personalities. Do they follow every procedure? Are they making notes in their logbooks, or are they making their entries? They're watching for any weakness to exploit, not necessarily even for an escape, just to be able to get a little bit of extra of whatever. And they are also very, very masterful in misdirection. Sometimes people will engage you with the sole purpose of distracting you while somebody else is doing something else, something that they may not or shouldn't be doing. So the coordination, I'm not really surprised at. I think, and not knowing anything about it, just based on my experience having investigated escapes, is that it is probably a combination of lack of staff, lackadaisical, as somebody termed it, work ethic. Maybe somebody also was involved on the inside. I think it's a little bit of everything, so that's the coordination part. I don't think it's very, very hard to coordinate that level of thing, especially now, since most prisons and jails are moving in a direction where we're not trying to isolate them anymore. We're trying to give them more and give them more programs. And I'm not here to argue whether that's okay or not, but what it does do is it creates more of an environment to coordinate and to collude and to do things of that nature.
Yeah. COE, I'm unable to for some reason, but can you put back up the break video, the actual them running out? And this is, you can see, this is, like Shawshank Redemption, these other jail break movies. Looks like they've been working on this. I got so many questions for all of you. Jim Fuda, I mean, if you had a guess here, and I know you don't know obviously like the ins and outs, but is this, and it appears it was an inside job, but does this look like something that they were planning for a really long time and it took them a while to figure out how to execute it? Or did one of these guys maybe just, I don't know, feel a loose panel, kicks it in, and now they're out in a matter of moments? What do you think?
I think this took a little bit of time and a lot of coordination to get this done. And one thing else you have to look at too is some training. Some sheriff's departments are different. When I came on my department in '73, the sheriff's department was also responsible for the jail. But nowadays that's changed, and the training is even different, from the street guys to guys that are just strictly working the jail. And you look at places like Denver, where their sheriff's department is strictly jail and civil stuff. So they're different responsibilities in different parts of the country. So I don't know how Orleans Parish works, but so I think some of the training, some lackadaisical stuff that is graveyard shift. Maybe these guys, like Rob mentioned, are working late hours, long hours, and they were sound asleep when that happened as well, or they help coordinate it and gave them that amount of time to get away.
Yeah,
complacency kills. It's one of those things that when you get complacent and you don't think it's going to happen, they're always planning it, and you have to remember that they're planning it in their head every day. And just because nothing's happening, you get complacent. It doesn't mean they stop like trying to figure out how to get out.
Yeah, Rob, that's like they say a terrorist only has to be right once, but you guys have to be on it every single second, which is what makes it so difficult. One of the metal bars had been intentionally cut with a tool, again suggesting premeditation. Now this just blew me away. There was no deputy on duty in the pod, so I guess it was a pod at the time. It was a civilian technician who was assigned to observe the pod, who left to get food. I mean, Chris, just speak to that. I mean, we have a guy that's, I guess, in charge of fixing a broken refrigerator or a pipe or something, who's told, watch these guys, and they all take off.
To be honest with you, I'm dumbfounded at that. I really have very little response to that. I know that in some prisons and jail environments, there is no officer inside the pod or on the block or in the housing unit. They have control towers where they watch, and if there is anything that might go wrong, they'll send in what we called in New York City a probe team or a CERT team known elsewhere. I'm dumbfounded by that. In New York City's Department of Correction, there is always an officer or even two on the floor. Whether they're overworked or not is a conversation we already had. But I will say that one thing that strikes me the most is looking at that image that you flashed a little while ago of that whole toilet unit being pulled away from the wall, and you see that gaping hole. That's not something that can happen in one day or even 2 days. So when things have evolved, I think for the worst. When I first started years ago, I remember doing searches, and we would have the inmate exit the cell. They would hold their mattress it would flop over their arms so they wouldn't be able to use their arms, at least not easily. And somebody would go in there. No, actually 2 or 3 people would go in and search the cell. And that's not just shaking out books and flapping the books open to see if anything thin like a scalpel or some kind of tool would fall out. That also involves shaking the radiators to see if they were actually secured to the wall. Because sometimes people, inmates will hide a weapon or a shank or whatever inside these things, and they want easy accessibility. I've always equated, especially with firearms carry or weapons, accessibility is inversely related to accessibility. So when you have something very easily accessible, you can grab it. And sometimes just shaking a radiator or using a mallet, as we were taught years ago, to pound on the windows and just, move around that toilet. If that toilet were moved, or if somebody just grabbed it and given it a good shake, they would have realized this thing came off the gosh darn wall, and then and maybe some measures might have been done. That's why I say a lot of this may have been cutting corners in a lot of ways, or just not doing what their directives probably indicate they should have been doing. But regarding a civilian maintenance worker or technician that has no experience whatsoever, as the sole sentinel that night, I think I really have nothing to say other than it's just a head shaker. It's a head scratcher.
Yeah, it boggles the mind. I love New Orleans. I've been there many times for work and for just to go visit, but it's also a wild city. And it's just, obviously sort of notorious for corruption and poor organization by government officials. And I guess we're seeing that again. So 3 employees have been suspended pending an investigation that I assume is already underway. Again, 7 of the 10 inmates are still at large. The age ranges here, 19 to 42. Most of them are in their 20s. At least 2 are charged or convicted for murder. And if you see this guy, Derek Groves, his photos in the middle row, second from the right, he's convicted already of 2 second-degree murders and 2 attempted murders, plus an assault on a corrections officer. He also looks like he's the tiniest guy. It's always the little guys that are maniacs. Authorities fear he may try to intimidate or harm trial witnesses. So he's one, that guy, Derek Groves, they're particularly interested in. And then the guy, the top right corner, Corey Boyd, he is facing a second-degree murder charge. So Rob D'Amico, you walk around most times, I guess, with a firearm, and if not that, you're going to crack a wine bottle and use a shard of glass to jab these guys in the neck, as you've told me before. But most of us, like me, don't know what the hell to do. So a couple of part question here. COE, can we put the video back up? These guys, when they ran out, if you look at them, they're all wearing bright white and bright orange, and they crossed I-10, which is a really busy interstate. Rob, what the hell happened? Like, no one called 911 and said, I see a flock of people here in white and orange. They look like inmates. No one called. The public didn't assist here.
It's New Orleans. It's one of those, like, you go down there, and I've been there a few times, and now my second youngest is in the grad program at Tulane. it's one of those things that they're not bothering me type city, then leave it, so to speak. I mean, I was shocked at first when these people came out, like we're eating dinner and they had like cookies in cellophane, that they were selling. And I'm like, wow, who just sells cookies that they made? Then I figured out they're marijuana cookies because there's an ice cream truck that's now a marijuana truck that drives around. It's just an attitude down there that's much different. But I would tell people, like, if you are going to be one of the good ones and report it, if you see them, don't make it obvious that you know who they are, because you don't want to be deemed a threat to their freedom, because that's where things get really dicey when these guys know, especially the one that's been convicted of murder already. He knows he's not getting out of jail. And if they think you're between them and getting caught again, that's so I just like ignore it and then get to a phone when you feel you're safe to report it, so to speak. Because you don't want to be seen as, the one that possibly ends their, freedom as they're going about it. So, and that's where it kind of comes in shocking. As we talked about, this happened around 1 a.m. I think they figured out they were gone at the head count at 8:30, and they didn't notify the public, which I thought was very dangerous, because this is one of the ones that you really have to get out to the public quickly. They came out with a bunch of quote reasons why they had to redo the count to make sure. No, you get it out there that you've lost a number of inmates. You don't have to be exact. Like, hey, we lost about a dozen inmates, to the public, because they're the ones that are going to be interacting with them. And then you want them as safe as they can be to make sure the doors are locked, to make sure that, if their kids are, going to school or something, that nothing happens. So I think even though that the sheriff admitted there's plenty of mistakes, I think that's one that she didn't own up to in the press conference.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know why, but I can literally watch this on a loop all day long. I don't know why. What's wrong with me? But Kendall Miles, who's 20, he was captured after a foot chase in the French Quarter. He had escaped from a juvenile detention center not once but twice before. So he's an experienced escapee. It'd be good to put on a resume. I am an experienced escapee. By the way, these guys are innovative and smart enough to get out of here. They should be doing better things with their lives. But yeah, it's that guy, Kendall Miles, who escaped before. Robert Moody, 21. He was captured later in the day following a Crime Stoppers tip, which helps. And then there was one more, and I don't have the latest name. I guess it's right in front of me. Keenan Dennis would be the other one who was captured. Just to catch everybody up on the sort of the nuts and bolts, the sheriff here, Susan Hudson, who had an issue of her own earlier, I think, having hit someone in her car. She's citing defective locks. I will unmute Chris when we get there. She's citing defective locks, facility understaffing. They're only 60% staff. Only 60% staff. She's also, of course, blaming. Oh, didn't know he puts his hand up to say something. COE, that's different. So real quick, let me just round this out. 60% staff and lack of funding for maintenance contracts. The sheriff says, of course, that the escape was helped by someone on the inside. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, what I was going to say was, very interestingly, there is one or two of these inmates that escaped that have an escape history. One of the things that's very important when you have an escape history is you properly classify that individual as an elevated threat of escape. And there is supposed to be more vigilance of that individual, increased security protocols around that individual, because if that person tried to escape once, they're very likely going to try to escape again. That becomes one of their things. The scary thing about all of this is that yes, I keep thinking about when I saw the time that they escaped, and then it was 8 hours before it was even announced. I'm different from most people, similar to Rob. I'm trained in how to use firearms. I carry one. I don't, I'm not I've done active shooter training. I've been out in the street dealing with some correction investigations. There are a lot of people out there that are just sleeping, and it would have been really great to know that there were not one, not two, not five, not 10, 10 people running out in this, escaped in the street, and who knows, who's to say that they all dispersed.
Yeah, Chris, let me hop in here because Vesper, I'm sorry, I don't normally cut people off, but Vesper is one of our go-tos. She always has information. She's down here in Miami, and she actually wears that mask in South Beach, and then she's got crazy tan lines afterwards. A female civilian employee monitoring the pod stepped away to get food and missed a getaway, according to authorities. So not only is this not a quote-unquote corrections officer, they've got a woman watching 10 really dangerous guys that she's going to get overpowered. A guy's going to get overpowered. I mean, this doesn't get, to me, any more Keystone Copsy ridiculous. What about this fact that it's not even a guy, it's a woman, and she's not even a real corrections officer?
Well, to be honest, I've worked with a lot of female correction officers who are very capable, just like I'm sure Rob and whoever. We all work with people of, male or female. I don't think that's the problem with their capability. I think that the mind-boggling thing is that this person is not a law enforcement individual and has no correction officer training. That's what bothers me. One of the things when I heard about, 2 or 3 people you said were suspended pending an investigation. I'm not clear as to why they were suspended. It could have very well been that they didn't follow certain procedures and protocols, that they were just incompetently working their job rather than actively and proactively colluding with these inmates to escape. I don't know, but I'm always hesitant. I've worked with very capable female law enforcement officers, so I don't think that's a problem. One thing people have to remember, though, is that when you work in a jail or a prison, the odds are always against the officer. It really is just a question of will the inmates decide to overpower you or not. There are procedures in place, but you're in an area with 50, sometimes more individuals who have chosen not to attack. I mean, I recall one inmate telling me, he pulled me aside. He says, "Hey, Captain Davila, you're a really good guy. You always make sure that we get what we're supposed to get. You're a stickler. You never give us anything else, but you always make sure we get our minimum standards." He goes, you do realize, though, that if we wanted to take you hostage, we could do it at any time, or something like that. And I remember it. I kind of chuckled, but it was a nervous chuckle, because a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm not afraid." I think when you work in an environment like that, whether you're in law enforcement on the streets or law enforcement in the jail, you have to be sufficiently anxious. Your vigilance has to be in a hyper-vigilant state. So to be honest with you, the fact that it was a female is not concerning to me. It concerns me that she was not on the post she was assigned to, but worse still, that she was on the post at all if she wasn't trained to be there. So obviously there is a lot of there's a lot of blame to go around.
Yeah, and people are blaming me, saying that now I'm whatever. Because what I was saying about a woman is, number one, she's not a trained corrections officer. I would say the same thing about a man. The COE would take down a guy way faster than I would take down a guy. What I'm saying, it's one person who happens to be a woman, who is definitely going to get overpowered by 10 people. So I'm not taking a slight at women. Everyone I'm married to a woman who I happen to love, and I have 2 daughters. I'm just saying it's ridiculous that they've got some untrained female in a pod with all these guys, and then they escape. Rob D'Amico, just because we've got this photo up, and then I'm getting back to Jim and Chris, we'll go around the horn a few more times because I've got some more questions. D'Amico, what is going on here? This is now a capture. He's got totally different clothes on, by the way, and it looks like he's almost wearing like Air Jordans, these camo pink pants. But this looks serious now. This is no longer like the Keystone Cops. You got a state police guy. Why are they taking this kind, I guess, of tact That's a Louisiana State Police helicopter. What are they doing? Where are they taking them? And why are they using a helicopter?
Well, I think for expedition, to make it expedient, like they have the helicopter, obviously to help if search areas and get in chase or something. And if you have it, and instead of risking the vehicles, you want to keep the cops on the street that are looking for them. So bring in a helicopter, put a sheriff deputy with him or two to bring them back, and fly them back straight to the jail. You don't have to worry about all the other logistics of where you're going, so to speak. So if you have the asset, use it, and it keeps more cops on the street looking for these guys, and then you get them back to a locked up facility safely, quickly. I think it just makes sense if you have it to use it. And I was thinking when I saw the clothes, I'm like, he either got them off a clothesline someone had out, or something along those lines. But the shoes, I didn't notice they're kind of pinkish, like I said, Air Jordans or something. So he might have had it gone inside for those, but he definitely got some clothes, though they're not, I guess maybe they're urban camo instead of, woodland.
Beth Taylor here, real quick. I'm sorry, Jim. Hang on. Please respect women correction officers. I expect them. You know how tough it is when you're a host of a show. If you say one this woman is not a corrections officer. That's my whole point. She's not a trained corrections officer.
I was going to pipe in and say I know some female soft operators that would kill most men out there. So yeah.
Wait, what's that? What's what operator? You guys use acronyms. What is that?
Special ops.
There's
some females in special ops, and they're pipe hitters just like the guys.
I would say that there's like 98% of women would kick my ass. So it's not that, and I'm not apologizing anymore. You guys get what I'm saying. Please don't make me get into a rant. By the way, if you show me a show, I know that's redundant, find me a show with 3 better guests talking about this story for the length of time that we are, and I will personally give you your money back for whatever you spent. I will write you a check. So please please share. We have a Patreon page. We've got cool shirts at the merch store. It all helps support the content creation. Jim Food, I haven't heard from you in a little bit, so just let me fill in some of the gaps. State, local, federal agencies all coming together right now. Police have relocated at least one family of a trial witness due to potential threats. The New Orleans PD is warning that anyone who is harboring escapees will be charged to the full extent of the law. The parish DA, a guy named Jason Williams, called it a complete failure of basic responsibility and lives are in danger. The AG for Louisiana, the Attorney General, beyond unacceptable, blasting the delay in time, on and on. Now the finger pointing has started. But Jim, if you have to guess, I mean, they're going to trickle in terms of the recapture, but this guy who's out there who's potentially trying to kill a witness, if he gets cornered in a home or elsewhere, this is where you come in. How dangerous and volatile a situation are we talking about? And do you think it could end this way with at least a couple of these guys?
Yeah, I think this one could be really tough. If he's going after a witness, that's a vengeance deal, and he's he knows he's not going to ever get out, especially after this act that he just did. So you just have to appeal to his ego and give him what he thinks is the best deal for him at that particular time. The least amount of people that he hurts, convince him to let those people go that shows good faith, and use that form of negotiation. You become his, and I'm air quoting, his friend, that he's the one, that you're the guy that can get him what he wants, listen to his demands. The bottom line is he thinks he's in charge when in fact he isn't. You got a SWAT team surrounding that house. You're giving him the best deal that he's going to get. He's going to come out of that house one way or another, whether he comes out on his own with his hands up or he comes out in a body bag, but he's going to come out of that house one way or another.
Jim, give us this is a hypothetical, obviously, but this has been Jim's real life. By the way, Jim started in 1973. You got this guy, Brian Johnson, who's worth $500 million trying to live forever. I was having this conversation last night, and he looks awful. This guy's looks horrible. He dyes his hair. Look at Jim Fuda, man. The guy looks like he's in his maybe early 50s, and the guy is not in his early 50s. I know how old he is, but he looks fantastic. So Brian Johnson, who runs an organization called Don't Die, before you die, maybe talk to Jim Fuda to get some anti-aging advice. But now that I got all wrapped up in this, I completely lost where we were. But Jim, were you going to make a point there? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say is that getting back to the helicopter thing that Rob was talking about is that, those things come in, and I ran a air support unit for a short time for the sheriff's office. And, that FLIR scope, if somebody gets a sighting of somebody, that FLIR scope to track that person down and get the dogs or whatever on that guy is phenomenal. So that's another use for the helicopters, is to help run these guys down.
Yeah. By the way, Navy veteran says, I've been in detentions for 35 years, and he's saying there's no way a civilian would be allowed to oversee these people in a pod, but that is the reporting. I wasn't in there, and I appreciate it, Navy veteran, and thank you for your service, by the way. But that is the reporting, that it was a non-corrections officer, a civilian, who was doing this. Rob D'Amico, to you. First 24 hours. This is the stuff I love. I ask Rob questions like I'm a 13-year-old because I'm fascinated by this stuff, and maybe because it's, I don't know. Maybe I have an inferiority complex. I have no idea. But Rob D'Amico, first 24 hours. Like, what is the playbook? And just to extend it, if they call you in, I mean, are you walking around New Orleans? Are they putting you, like they did with a DC sniper? Are they putting you into a helicopter with a long gun to snipe these guys in case something happens? Are you on the ground? Where do you know how to begin? And how important are the first 24 hours?
Well, the big thing is the command post, and you have ground teams, you have air teams, you have like hard roadblock teams type of thing, because you want to be able to pin them into an area. And they're going to have, you want to take away that long freedom of movement. So you want to prevent them getting in a vehicle, getting on the highway, Route 10, going east or west, or I'm not sure the one that goes north out of New Orleans. So you have roadblock checks up. You're trying to keep them in an area, and then you got to put pressure on them. You can't let them get comfortable. You can't let them get to a point where they can start, like I said, changing clothes, and then, because as time goes on, your area that they can get to, gets so big. So you try to do it all. And that's where the command post comes in. And whatever resources, different, state police have helicopters. So they're probably ones that come in with helicopters. And then you have probably, you don't want the helicopter flying up all the time. You want to be able to respond somewhere quickly, because you're looking at refuel and everything else. I don't think like with the DC sniper, with like the HRT having snipers and helicopters is not a common thing. But you may be able to, as if you get a sighting, get the helicopter over there. You have some assets that are being able to search with the light, or even, just visibly if it's during the day, that has maybe 4 deputies in it, so that if someone is spotted and can move, you can get in front of them. But you have all kinds of different response, and that's what the coordination's about. And that's what, training, you do tabletops to talk about it. And then as more assets and resources come in, then the command, who's ever overall in charge, can look at it and says, okay, this PD or this, agency comes in, this is what they have. How is it best used in what we have? Is there another area they can go? And then you have a map that you're constantly looking at it all. And they just came from they had the Super Bowl, they had the New Orleans incident on New Year's Day. So they're used to these type of, command posts and these incidents and working with their federal partners. So they probably all know each other, came in, and you have one commander, and then you start delegating, and then each of the agencies know what they have, so to speak. And sure, FBI came in, they had their SWAT team. You want to reserve the tactical folks, so if someone does become located in barricade, that you can put tactical resource on it. But you also have to remember, you could have 2 or 3 barricaded at the same time, and now you got 3 incidents where you have SWAT and a negotiator dealing with these guys at the same time. So it is a bit different that way.
Yes, it is. And Rob, while we've got this photo up, I don't know the technical term other than like a spit mask, but what does this tell you that they've got this on this person's head here? Was he being antagonistic?
I don't know. I'd maybe have to ask Chris, unless he could be could have an infectious disease that they know about, and they want to prevent it being spread. But I would ask Chris, because I'm yeah.
That to me looks like a spit mask, and but that's not to say it's not for any other reason. He could be like Rob said, maybe he has an infectious disease of some kind, but that is a spit mask. And that protects, the people who are escorting him from being spat in the face. Even whether he has an infectious disease or not, it's no fun to get spit in the face. I did want to just say something also, and a lot of people don't talk about this on different ends. Drones. I'm an FAA certified drone pilot. I use drones professionally and also recreationally. One of the things I think about, and it's been racing through my head just watching this massive group of people running out with the shot you have on now. Were they all in the same housing unit? I guess they were, but had notification been made, or did they know that these guys escaped during the night? Because I'm not clear that they didn't know. I'm just thinking maybe they just didn't tell the public until the morning. I don't know what the circumstances are. However, if they were escaping at night, since there's so many fewer people running around the street, a thermal drone could have been deployed in some of the areas. And perhaps because if you wait till the daytime, then the ambient temperature begins to equalize a little bit more with the human body, and you're not going to see them as well. But at night, you might have been able to see them escape. Like I said, I'm not familiar with all the ins and outs. I tend to be very, very hesitant to believe everything that's put out in a press conference, because sometimes things are intentionally left a bit vague. Sometimes things are omitted for security reasons, or sometimes they're omitted because I guess some people are just lying. I don't know. But speaking of drones, also, it could be that some of these individuals received some of their tools to escape by drones. It's not. People are using drones all the time for nefarious reasons. Some are using them for wonderful reasons. Taking great pictures or search and rescue or whatever. But it could very well be that a drone was deployed, or several drones were deployed, and maybe dropped the tool in or something.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. By the way, I was covering Diddy all week in New York City. We're going to continue to do lunch lives this week because I've got contacts who are in the courthouse, and we'll be relaying information, and I'll bring you up to date on what's happening there. And what are the there's this mess going on at Newark Airport where the radar system keeps going down, which makes you feel great as you're getting into a plane in that area. But the short of it is the flights at LaGuardia kept getting delayed. So I'm sitting getting a bite to eat with three other strangers, and they found out, I guess, overheard me talking to someone on the phone that I was at Diddy. So next thing you know, I'm telling them all about the Diddy stuff. But the guy right to my left, literally, shout out to Jonah. He's a reporter for the Times-Picayune, which is like the paper of record for New Orleans. So he was headed back to cover this, and maybe we'll get him on tomorrow or the next day. But he's going to be in the middle of all this. Like, what are the chances you're going to meet a guy that's literally a writer for the New Orleans papers? So again, he might come on. Jim Fuda. And for those who are joining late, Jim is a hostage negotiator. He's been was in law enforcement for 30, 40 years, for a long time. From a psychological standpoint, which is a big part of what you do, for a minute, let's just go into the minds of these escapees. What's going on in their head? Like, they have no money, no wallets that we know of, no cell phones. They got to lay low. They don't want to go back to jail. So what's going on with them?
Well, I would call it desperation. And I would say they all probably thought they had a plan when they got out, somebody meeting them. I don't know if any of them are still together, which I would thought they would spread and go their own direction. But as their resources diminish, it's going to get more and more desperate. So obviously they escape for a reason. They don't want to be in prison. So it's going to be, the longer this goes on, I think the more desperate they are going to become, and that they may be harder to take into custody. Or the other side of that coin, they may be just exhausted, depending on what resources they have or what they've utilized or ran out of.
Yeah, and with Danilo Cavalcante, they eventually found him just laying in, I think, in like a wooded area, and it was the canine, of course, that got him with a special like extraction team. The end of this statement looks like Joel did not get COVID in New York. There should be a yet at the end that could still be coming. We don't know, but hopefully not. Rob D'Amico, and then we'll start to wind it up in just a few. But Rob D'Amico, this is different. Danilo Cavalcante, the most recent fugitive that we covered, who is like 4'11", I think Brazilian guy, but he was running around like the woods of Pennsylvania. New Orleans is more of an urban environment. So, there's crowds, there's obviously Bourbon Street. How does that change your guys' hunt for these guys?
Well, it's different. I mean, there's so many, like you look at it and say, I'd rather be looking for someone in the forest because there's not as much interaction with the public, which I think is somewhat safer, but it still has its dangers because there was houses out there and people come across them. I think this, in the city it gets tough, but you also have that many people in the city looking, and you have the ability. So there's pros and cons of each. Because when you're in the city, you have, again, how many people also looking for them as opposed to the woods. But you can use technology in the woods, like we talked about last time, especially, as Chris had said about, thermal cameras, to be able to look down and see, different temperatures. And it's great at night. And, there's not a lot of movement at night. And it's easy to do that way, and it's tougher in the city. So, I mean, it's tough around. I just say it's always more dangerous when you have that many people around, because even if he's walking down the street and there's some, innocent people there and he sees a cop, and you talked about mindset. The mindset is like they're constantly thinking that they're being discovered or someone knows who they are. They get very, paranoid in it. They get tired when the adrenaline, I'm sure they probably went for a couple hours on pure adrenaline to do everything. And then adrenaline dies and they start getting desperate and tired. They can do stupid things. And when you got the innocent, public around, he's an armful away from grabbing a hostage. And then now you have a different situation. So, there's no good place to hunt a fugitive, so to speak, I guess maybe out in the desert. But it is what it is, and they're going to deal with it. But I think they're going to get enough calls back and forth eventually. Like I said, I give them all of them rounded up within 2 weeks.
Oh, there you go. By the way, both Vesper and I know Julie Frew will probably know the name off the top of their head. And it was a blonde woman who helped a big dude escape, and then she ends up unaliving herself when they're cornered, and he's back in prison. But people, here we go. I'm going to get hate again. People are suggesting maybe one of these people is having a romance with a female, perhaps the female that was in there. Who knows? But and maybe that's how this all went down. But it kind of goes to the bigger picture, Chris. And I promise we'll wind it up. You got to run a parallel investigation. Vicky White, I knew she would know right away. That's why I say best guest, better community. I think like 99% of STS Nation could just like walk into an interview room and get a confession. So a parallel investigation, Chris. I mean, has the investigation inside the jail already started? That's question number one. And do you think that they were testing people, testing security, testing what time the actual corrections officer is out of the pod, all these things? Your thoughts?
I would argue that these inmates knew that there would be a civilian in there, because I'm sure this is not the only night that this happened, or I'm guessing it wasn't the only night this happened. And again, they spend 99% of their day watching us and thinking about what they can do to get more for themselves. I'm not speaking about every single inmate, so I don't want to receive that backlash. But what I'm saying is that there's a lot of time being spent watching the officers, less probably than the one officer watching 50 people. There are 50 people watching one. And yes, the investigations are being run, because if this were only her fault, then only one person would be suspended. But there are 3 people suspended. So they're probably looking at what these individuals may have or have done or did not do. Keep in mind that when an officer does a patrol or walks through housing areas, they're supposed to document what they did. And I am sure, based on my experience, because I was on that end also, I was in the investigation unit, where I had to make sure that if there was any malfeasance or any escapes, did the officers do what they were supposed to do? Did they conduct a tour when they wrote down, I conducted a tour of the area at 2 a.m.? We go back and we look at the cameras, and we look, did that at 2 a.m. or roughly, there's always a minute or two difference, but approximately 2 a.m. But if there was no tour of the area done from 1 a.m. to 9 a.m., then the person that wrote, I did a tour at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. was clearly lying, and wrote and put in a false entry. So there may be some of that. I wouldn't knock the fact that some of the maintenance issues aren't real, but one of the things I was always taught and always made sure I told the officers who worked under me, I said, make sure that if there is a maintenance issue, if there's a lock that's not working, if a cell door is not closing properly, if there's anything of a security nature that is deficient, be sure that you not only document that deficiency, but ensure that you've also put in a request for a maintenance, to abate that situation with a maintenance request. That way, at least you're covered. I am not going to say, oh, this sheriff is just saying that there are maintenance issues just to scapegoat, maintenance issues. But oftentimes there are maintenance issues, in addition to the fact that you have a civilian, inexperienced person running, a housing unit, in addition to the fact that there are this, that, and the other thing. I think it's just a confluence of really bad business, just not doing what everybody should be doing.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
My cat's name is Karen, who's often in here, a friend of the show. She says it is a state-run facility. This is more of a jail, I believe, obviously, than a prison like Angola, which is the infamous called The Farm as well. If you never saw the documentary The Farm, it's worth a watch. For those who are listening, we are showing a wanted poster and the number here to call if you see anything. By the way, the FBI offering, I think it's been upped maybe, because Rob was saying 2,000 a person, but here they're saying 5,000 total, I believe. But the number is 225-925-4192, 225-925-4192. I'll tell you right now, that's a problem. They should have 1-800 call NOLA. Like, who the hell is going to remember 225-925-4192? So Louisiana, change your reward number there. That's step number 1, and I will give you that advice for free.
Hey, Joel, excuse me.
Yes, sir. Yes,
they can
sir.
also call 1-800-222-TIPS.
There you go. There you go. And that's why we have these guys on 1-800-222-TIPS. Much better. You can remember. What are you going to remember more? 1-800-222-TIPS or 225-925-4192? Jim Fuda, to you, and for those who don't know, Jim has been in law enforcement for many years. I guess most recently before retirement as a hostage negotiator. I sort of asked you this earlier, a 2-part question. Can you share an interesting fugitive story with us from your past, and what's your message to the public?
Just be observant, be a good witness. I do have a fugitive story where the second, in fact, Rob should know this case. We discussed it at the FBI Academy. Second documented case where somebody was killed on a deadline, and a guy shot and killed a 17-year-old girl in front of me in a stolen van. That that he ended up slightly injuring himself and claimed it was a homicide suicide or a suicide pact, and that was BS because he did it in front of us. We saw what he had done. He murdered a 17-year-old in front of us.
Horrific. And what happened to him? Did he get apprehended?
He's still in prison.
Good. I hope he stays there for the rest of his life. Chris Davila, very well spoken and informed, particularly about this issue. And he comes to us from where I just left, New York City, where he was a captain in the NYC DOC, the Department of Corrections. Chris, I'm just going to leave it open-ended. We've got 7 of 10 jailbirds on the run in a city not that dissimilar from New York City. Your thoughts as we say goodbye here today? Oh, you're muted. I'm sorry. Let me see if I can get you.
I would say, oh, thanks. Sorry. I would agree 100% with Jim and be a good witness, be a good observer. I'm not sure that $5,000 is enough to want to engage with somebody who has very little or nothing to lose. Make your phone call discreetly, see what you see and wait till you're out of harm's way and do that kind of thing. I'm always, I think about all of these things and I say to myself, what would I do if, 10 people escaped from a local jail or prison near my house? I'd have specific instructions for my family, stay inside. If it's not me coming through the door, you're not sure if you see somebody kind of looking outside or, walking around. I don't like to use the word suspicious because that's so subjective, but let's be honest, in these circumstances, maybe a little overly paranoid would be a good thing. I'm sure that we're going to learn a lot more about this investigation and where the deficiencies were. And maybe we won't know everything, unless you're a real insider and you kind of know what, if you're privy to the ins and outs of the investigation. But I can't, without knowing anything 100%, I know that there were deficiencies in many places. There's not necessarily collusion with somebody, but there very well could have been. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, really well said. We're going to find out. I know that. Stay safe to all the people in NOLA, New Orleans. Rob D'Amico, friend of mine, friend of the show. He's also got a show on our second channel, which is a true crime talk at STS Talk. Rob D'Amico, you got to share one of your fugitive stories. I know you have at least one. And your final thoughts.
I have to think while I'm answering a question. I saw a question that just kind of, would this inspire others and how would law enforcement try to prevent that? I think it does. And I think most times when there's a big break-in, a lot of the prisons around there, because of that, go into certain lockdowns and they take preventative measures, especially obviously the prison that they escaped from because of everything going on. A lot less restrictive, a lot more restrictive in their movement. And then some other prisons may do that because, again, it inspires others, so to speak. I'm trying to, the fugitive story again, I when I worked fugitives, I always hated Saturday nights because America's Most Wanted was on. So you knew that a bunch of calls were going to come in and you're going to spend, especially if it was a fugitive out of, I was in Miami. So a lot of fugitives come down to South Florida and Key West because it's, it's the last of, the continental United States, so to speak. And you always hated answering those calls because some of them were just crazy calls, but they all led, eventually that's how these guys get caught. So these tips, you have to follow up on them. And you don't want to get complacent because as soon as you get complacent, going after a fugitive.
Hold on, Rob. I got a follow-up question. See, America's Most Wanted ends. The Crime Stoppers line goes off in Miami, and they say they think they saw this guy at a Publix supermarket. And now you got to get in your vehicle and head out there and look for this guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So at the time, the FBI hosted the South Florida Violent Crime Fugitive Task Force. There was probably about maybe 10 agents and then cops from the entire, South Florida area on it. And as soon as, they got a call in, America's Most Wanted, it would get, pushed down. If someone said they saw him in Miami, And we'd probably get 4 or 5 guys to follow up on that lead. Maybe 2 to see if it had any legs to it. But a lot of nights were like that when you had something like that. So you just have to do it because eventually one of those tips is going to be correct.
Can I also just say something?
Yeah, please. By the way, real quick, is Joel sick? I haven't heard any whining. No, I'm just too tired from New York. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, one of the things, and I echo what Rob and Jim are saying. Sometimes you have to go back to the basics. We had an escape from a jail on Rikers, and it was an escape where the inmate actually kind of peeked at another person's book and case number. He took the other guy's hat, got onto a bus, and was released from a courthouse. And when I say go back to the basics, sometimes it's not that hard to catch these guys. Sometimes they do go back to what I think either Rob or Jim mentioned. They go back to what they know, people they know, places they know. This one particular guy knew he was going away. He was getting ready to be transferred to state prison for the rest of his life, or for the better part of the rest of his life. And he just went home to have dinner with his dad one last time because he knew it would never happen again. Or one other inmate that escaped from the prison barge that they have in the South Bronx, cut a hole in the window. He was a Russian immigrant, and he went right back to Brighton Beach to his family's house, where they caught him, or something along those lines. My point is sometimes you have to just go back to the basics. If you get a call from a tip line, you follow up on that tip, because you can't just discard it, or the obvious. I think that's one of the problems here. People weren't doing the basics. They weren't going back to the basics. 101. Do your job, do your tour. If they escape, look for the obvious places first. So I just wanted to mention those couple of things.
Yeah, I think that's important. And the path here, there are no motion detectors for movement and alarms. I'm sure there are. We're going to find out what happened. There's also something known as, most big cities in America after 9/11 put up kind of like I guess surveillance fencing, but they've got a thing called NOLA 5000, which is a camera system, and that's where they were able to use facial recognition to, I think, at least catch one of them. But I always say best guess, better community. So I'm going to be out and about today. I haven't seen my daughter and son, and my other daughter's away. And I promised I'd get him soccer cleats, so that's what I'm going to do. So if you guys hear that another person is nabbed or something is happening, email us, survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com. Eventually, we're going to get an app in place where you can just message us on an app. But for now, we got to old school it, not a BlackBerry, but email. Eventually, there will be no email. You'll have a chip in your head, and you will blink 3 times, and all the communication will be done. When we look back at email, it will be like looking back at radio. Like my dad used to listen to Yankee games on the radio. That is what email will.
I still like listening to Yankee games on radio.
It's the best, right?
But it's going to be like the rotary phone. People are going to be like, email. What's that?
Yeah, it's crazy how fast this tech is moving. But huge thanks to Rob D'Amico, again, friend of mine, friend of the show. Jim Food, a friend of mine, friend of the show. Chris Davila, friend of mine, friend of the show. Really insightful stuff. You're not going to find a better show on this anywhere. If we get breaking news, we will try to bring it to you live. We will likely stay on this tomorrow and into next week, as we will with Diddy, Donna Adelson, the Menendez brothers, all these other crazy stories with Brian Koberger. So stay with us. We'll bring you the latest. Love you, America. Thank you, everybody. Love you, Jersey and Florida, Seattle, Washington, and New York. See you later, everybody. Guys, stick around 1 second.